Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass.
Hello.
Hey, Peter, if you can have your screen on, that would be one. I know that I don't think might be lunchtime where you are. In fact, is it lunchtime? Let me
It
know
is
in
lunch.
the chat. It is lunchtime. Good. Where have we got people joining from today? I know they're all over Australia. In fact, I just got off with someone in where were we? Queensland, in Rockhampton, of all places, and it was definitely not lunchtime there. Nearly though, but not quite. Let me know where you're coming in from in the chat. Whereabouts are you located?
Port Macquarie.
Oh, Macquarie. Beautiful. I mean, very just for something different, cloudy Melbourne. Isn't that boring just to talk about the weather? But it's the fact. We've had some beautiful, almost like Sydney weather in here in Melbourne. It's been very humid and lovely, but I think autumn is coming fast. Very, very fast. Kempsey, Melbourne, Port Macquarie. For those of you that are just joining, let us know in the chat where you are coming in from today. Always nice to know where people are, where they're located. All right, as we're doing that, Rouse Hill in Sydney. Hello, Tess. Lovely to have you on the call. I know we haven't spoken for a while, but you're speaking to the wonderful Celine from our team, which is good.
Yeah. How are you, Rita?
I'm good, and you?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, to honor your time, because we're just on 1 minute past the hour, we're going to make a start very, very soon. The session is being recorded, just for if you want it for later on. It's always something you can go back to. It's something that we pop on our YouTube channel, so then we can go back to it. If you can have your screens on today, that would be super useful for me, just to as an exchange of energy. If you are happy with that, don't worry if you're munching lunch or having a coffee or doing. But if you can't, I understand also, which is absolutely fine. I would like to commence number one with sharing my screen, and we will be sharing a screen today because there are a few things we want to cover and that we need to cover. So before we get into the session proper, we are in meeting, not in webinar, so we can see who's who and who's here. For those of you that are coming in, and if you're looking at the chat, locations are there because we're just sharing where we're from, because that's always a fun thing to do. And we've got a bunch of people that are obviously going to be joining as we go. Jen is here from my team, and she'll be letting people in. Today's session is about coaching for accountability, and we run these masterclasses on a monthly basis here at the Deliberate Leader, and it's always our pleasure to do so. And this is our topic today. You told us that this is one of those important topics for you, and so we thought, well, why don't we go ahead and cover that? So it is coaching for accountability. Before we go in, though, to the session proper, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country, and I want to honour and pay my respects to those from the Kulin Nation. And this is a picture of the Yarra River here in Melbourne. For those of you that are not familiar with it, our Yarra River runs through our city, and it's an really important part of our city, our waterways here. It doesn't always look so beautiful, actually. It's actually like a dark kind of browny green most of the time. But from different spots on our Yarra, going all the way through up to Warrandyte and into our kind of country areas out of the city, it's just a really beautiful way to connect into country and connect with country. And as we start a Monday morning and a new week, I'm hoping for you that you've had the opportunity to connect to country. Maybe that's a walk outside, a breath outside, even just looking at a window outside. I think it's a really important part of leadership, is being able to ground yourself, gather your thoughts. And if this is the only time you've been able to do so today, then I hope it's a reminder for you, and it's a bit of inspiration to ground yourself particularly on. So a very warm welcome to you as people continue to come in. Hello and welcome. Coaching for accountability is what we're covering today over the next 60 minutes. It is a fairly interactive session. We've got some opportunities for you to participate in the chat. And if you haven't, I'm sure by now we've all done that on Zoom. But if you're normally a Teams person, not a Zoom person, just go to the bottom of your screen. You'll see a bunch of icons. One says chat, and that enables you to be able to participate freely in the conversation. We've also got some polls and things that are set up today. Actually, I'll just open up the chat so that's ready for me here. We've also got some polls and that we'll be running today, and that way we've got a really interactive session and an interactive 55 minutes with some time for questions at the end. This is a masterclass, so it will be me doing a lot of the talking. I don't normally do a lot of the talking and facilitation, but today I will be. But I still welcome and I absolutely encourage you to be asking questions on the chat and contributing to the dialogue. Because one thing I do know, having worked with leaders for a long, long time and having been a leader myself for now over 25 years, is that you've got experience, you've got stories, you've got insights that will be uniquely yours and absolutely worthy of contribution. So please feel free to keep those going rather than me having to do all the talking. But if you're here to learn, also you're in the right place from me and from your peers that are in the session. So a very warm welcome again. All right, what are we doing here today? Before we get into what we're doing, I wanted to, for those of you that have not seen this, our business is called The Deliberate Leader. And I get a lot of questions on why is it called The Deliberate Leader, Rita? And what does deliberate actually mean in leadership? Well, little sidebar note, at the moment I'm undertaking a PhD, and my PhD is in deliberate leadership. And when I started my conversation with my supervisors about 6 months ago, they said, oh, well, Rita, there's lots of different types of leadership. Which I'm not going to bore you with right now, but they said, what's unique about deliberate leadership? And so my mission over the next 3, 4, 5 years, however long it takes me to do this intense research, is to find a way to back it up in the academic literature. What I can tell you from initial research is that if we really focus on deliberate leadership, we're playing with these 3 key areas. If you are a leader today or if you're aspiring to leadership, I reckon this is pretty important. I was going to say groundbreaking, might be, but that might be overstating it, but it is pretty important. As a leader, you've got to have your energy right. So it's the energy that you're bringing in, and that's why I did that piece on grounding and doing whatever it is to ground you. And that's every day. In fact, several times a day if you're a leader, because if you don't have your energy right, the whole thing's going to be off. Your conversations will be off, the way you feel will be off, and people pick that up, right, based on your energy. Your relationships need to be in good order. That's a relationship with yourself, your relationship with your team, your relationship with your friends and family. And when we've got that going really well, then we get this beautiful momentum. We feel more energized by that. But I'm sure you know when you've had a difficult conversation, either at work or at home, that can really impact your energy, right? So we've got to be paying attention to relationships. And then finally, because we are in the game of leadership, hopefully to increase our performance, our outcomes, business results for ourselves and our team. So that performance is huge too. But the way that we motivate people to perform is what helps their performance. So if we've got those 3 things humming nicely, then I reckon we're being pretty deliberate in how we lead. That's our philosophy, our framework here at the Deliberate Leader. All right, now let's get into what we're doing today. We are looking at accountability in leadership. So we're going to, some of you will have seen me talk about leadership and coaching in leadership, but we're going to go to our base model. So having that coaching mindset, we're going to look at having and creating accountability that sticks. And we're going to look at what gets in the way with accountability. We're going to also be looking at empathy and clarity and creating that for our people, because that, of course, helps accountability. And then looking at how we stretch performance without burning out. Now, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of work cover statistics for clients, and I help clients out with particularly stress and maybe toxic dynamics in teams. And I see those work cover premiums increasing in every industry, not just the ones that you would expect. And a lot of that is coming from this feeling of burnout and stress. So we want to increase accountability. We want to make sure we're stretching in the right direction for business performance, but we don't want to do that at the cost of our people. And so what we're covering today really balances those 2 things. So we can have accountability and performance, but without burning our people out. And then finally, I'm going to take you through a model today, which is about growth-focused conversations, and we'll have some time for Q&A. All right, very, very good. I am just going to go into the chat now, and it looks like we are all still good, but please feel free to contribute as we go along. All right. So in one word, please. Now, I'm going to, this is I'd love you to do this in the chat, but when you do this in the chat, please don't press enter. So in one word, this is a question, then I'm going to count us down 3 to 1, and then I'm going to say go, not press it. And then you're going to press enter. Is everyone good with those instructions? All right. So in one word, what makes accountability conversations difficult? And please pop that in the chat, but don't press enter. All right. In 3, 2, 1, go. Press enter. Oh, there we go. All right. What have we got? Ensure you don't diminish their confidence, emotions, fear, deflection, denial. Yes, emotions coming up strongly. Oh, it looks like it's the hot pick for today. Emotions. All right. For those of you that wrote down emotions, tell me a little bit more. What's going on? Are we worried about their emotions, our emotions, all the emotions in accountability conversations? Sasha. Where's Sasha? Sasha, are you happy to unmute and tell us? Sasha's like, no thanks. I'm not prepared to Oh, she's unmuted. Sasha, you there? Maybe we don't have audio. Lara, hello.
Is that working now?
Oh, Sasha, yes, it is. Hello.
Oh, sorry.
My emotions, all good.
I guess, yeah, hurting their feelings, their emotions, having them be upset. Yeah.
Yep. So how they're feeling, then that might therefore filter us a little bit in terms of what we might be saying. Fair enough. Yes. Thank you. Lara, you also said emotions. Are you able to give us a little bit more context about what you mean there? Lara's unmuted. Nicola, I'm going to go to you because I can see you on the screen. Hello and long time no see. Nicola, what did you mean by emotions?
I think because you're always thinking like 3 steps ahead, you have that conversation and then you feel that, depending on who you're having the conversation with, the repercussions of that, So preparing the emotions of yourself to prepare, then the emotions of the after for yourself, but also the after for them. And then the emotions of others within the team once then that ripple effect of having the conversation.
Yeah. God, there's a lot in it, isn't there? Like, see, we think about, and no worries, Lara, all good. We think about, come on, like accountability. I'm sure we're all here because we believe that it's important. It is, by the way, for team dynamics, performance, also psychological safety. But you've heard there from Nicola, there is so much more to it than just turning up and being accountable even to have the conversation. And even when we're looking at emotions, it's not just theirs, but it's ours. How are we feeling about preparing for that conversation, right? There's a lot that's in it. So it's no wonder that many of us avoid the conversation, and we do. So why do we avoid the conversation? Well, before we're going to get into that, before we look at why we're avoiding the conversation, I wanted to introduce you to our Leader as Coach framework. If you've done any work with me in any of the programs, I know some of you have, and hello to you all. It's good to see you again. This is our Lead Like a Coach framework. I had to have that prop ready and I didn't. And it's in this book here, You Are How You Lead, which was now published, it'll be 3 years in October. But our research at the time really looked at how coaching can be used as an additional style in your repertoire of how you lead. So I'm not purist. If you've worked with me before, I will never say to you, well, you must then coach every time that you are leading, because coaching is sometimes required, but then sometimes you need a more directive style too. And sometimes you need to play that mentor and that supporter instead of that coach, which is slightly different in the language. But when we are leading like a coach, and particularly if we want to drive up accountability, which is what today's all about, we really need to be thinking about these 6 aspects. if you think about this little diagram like a flywheel, so I just want you to pretend on the screen for a minute that it's moving, whizzing around, and it's got a little motor. And that motor sits where lead like a coach is in the center of the screen, right? Self-awareness and trust are the things that will propel your ability to lead like a coach. They are also the fundamental aspects that will propel your ability to increase accountability in your team. And you do that through your own self-awareness, so how you're turning up, you being tuned into your language, your body language, everything, that energy that we talked about at the start, and then also that trust that you've got in your people. So if you've got self-awareness and you understand how you're coming across and you're not inadvertently doing anything that's maybe meaning that they don't trust you and they don't want to tell you when things are stuffing up and not going wrong, or they don't want to have a hard conversation with you, right? That's going to help your ability to have better conversations as a coach. So we've got self-awareness and trust. They are our propellers, right? Spinning all the time. And if you do leader of the coach, we spend a couple of hours on each of those things. In fact, half a day on self-awareness. But the other things we need to really help us with accountability are the ability to connect, empathy, which we'll cover today, the ability to ask great questions, like those questions that stay with you. By Wednesday, the question will still be with you because you're like, oh my gosh, that was such a good question. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still developing those insights. It's like the television show that you go, oh, why am I still thinking about this? And it's because it's got a hook, right? It hooks you in, or a great book, whatever your thing is. So it's the ability to connect, the ability to ask great questions. And then what we're not covering today, but is important as part of this model, is how we calibrate information as a leader. Because I don't know about you, but I am hit with several data points every single day. In fact, hundreds of them in my role as a leader. So I'm looking physically at data. I'm having conversations. We're exploring things together as a team. They're all points that then as a leader, I need to calibrate to then help me with what my next move is going to be. What might I include in that conversation? How might I structure that email? What feedback am I going to give? When am I going to give that feedback? That's that calibration process. And then finally, support. You know, if we're going to be a coach that just gets, from the sidelines, oh my gosh, I have to tell you this, which is random, right? But with my 11-year-old, I've just finished watching the series Cobra Kai. Have we got any Cobra Kai fans in the house? Just put your hands up if you are. Now, if you are a Karate Kid diehard, I grew up in the era where Karate Kid was a thing, Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi. You will love Cobra Kai. It's a spin-off series from those movies. Now, there is in one of the scenes, and I'm not going to, no spoiler alerts, right? But you've got the champions that are being coached by their senseis from the sidelines. So they're in one of their final karate tournaments. And you've got a couple of teams represented by different senseis. Now, one of the teams has a sensei that literally, it's a bit graphic, but literally whacks the karate, the contestant across the face, like in front of everybody, because they've made a mistake in the tournament. They've lost a point, right? Terrible, terrible, terrible. So you've got those types of coaches, which none of us are, none of us will ever be. It's a series, it's made up, right? Then you've got the senseis on the other side that really tap into what's going to motivate you in this point in time to help you win that point. Now, from that, you can see there are two absolutely stark opinions, and we can see which one the better one is in terms of motivating. It's obviously the one that's going to give you the motivating pep talk from the sidelines, not the coach that's going to tell you everything that you've done is that it's crap and that's wrong and at worst be physically abusive to you in that tournament. If you are a fan of AFL, the coaches that can pull the players aside and in that moment know exactly what to do for that player, so that's support, knowing what support is going to be tailored for that player, are the ones that are going to be more successful, not just as coaches, but in what they can do for that person. So when we're talking today about accountability, we are talking at it through the lens of how we lead like coaches. And we're paying in particular attention, how do we get the best out of our team? So if we're really focusing in on self-awareness and trust, and today we're looking at connection and asking great questions, then we are on our way to being able to have conversations that increase accountability, but don't impact trust. All right, that's enough about Cobra Kai, maybe, unless I get another good analogy that comes from it, because it's so fresh in my mind. All right, let's keep going. So I have another question for you now, and I'm very happy if you just please type your answers in the chat, and you can press enter as you go. When someone in your team struggles, what is your default action? Now, by struggle, I mean they've got a challenge, something's not, maybe they're not picking something up as quickly as you need them to, something's going on, they've got a struggle. What is your default action? What do you tend to find yourself doing? Beautiful. You can see those answers coming through. Excellent. That all looks like pretty good stuff, right? There's nothing in there that's, yeah. And Stephen says to understand why they're struggling. What is the pain point? Exactly right. Most of you are saying checking in, asking great questions, supporting, discussing, good. If you're saying step in, my question probably is, when do you step in? Even with all, as I look through your reflections right now, even doing the check-in, like knowing when to do the check-in, how do you know when the right time is to do that? Are you waiting for tears and kind of, handing the head? Or are you just, what is your sign to tell you that, yeah, now I need to step in? Emma, I can see you on my screen. Hello and welcome. Are you happy to elaborate? When's the right time for you to step in?
Is that me, Emma?
Yeah, come on.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that often it's quite good to just trust your gut. Like if you have a good connection with your team and the people that you're working with, often you can feel energy levels within the team like are high or low, and just being connected to people and thinking, hey, something feels a bit off. They feel a little bit down, or their work's changing, or how they are in meetings. I feel like it's just like a trust your gut, and if you feel that there's a benefit in speaking to them, and it might just be saying, hey, let's go for a coffee, then you should do it. There's nothing wrong with just checking in and being like, hey, I'm just checking. I feel like we could do it in chat kind of thing. We think bad's ever going to come from kindness.
Yeah, great. I love it. And so, Emma, what I'm taking away from that is it is using your gut instinct, and that's you tuning into energy, so your energy and theirs, and then working out from that, what's my next course of action here. One of the things that we can feel compelled to do as leaders is fix problems, because isn't that what we're paid for? Like, don't we have hierarchical structures in organizations and leadership so we can go in and find solutions and fix problems? Do you agree with that? Just give me a show of hands, or with your reaction, thumbs up. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. But I'd say there's an and. And if we are taking the opportunity to dive in too quickly, then I reckon we're also taking an opportunity away from someone in terms of solving their problem. And this is where accountability really comes in. The essence of accountability in leadership and coaching for accountability means that we have to really be paying attention as leaders when we're stepping in and doing something for somebody, i.e. fixing the problem, finding the solution, and knowing that in our role as leaders, the other part that's really valuable, in fact, more valuable, is helping the person get to their solution and their outcome through coaching, through asking them great questions, through playing a role which is more guide than doer. This is very counterintuitive to leaders that are quite hands-on, and also leaders that are, in environments that are highly operational and highly process-driven. So that is the caveat. And if you find yourself there, it might be a little bit more challenging, but not impossible to still employ what we're talking about here. So your role as leader, if we think about what we've just covered in terms of or the Leading Like a Coach framework, we also want to make sure that we're not jumping in too quickly to solve and to fix. And that's why my question was, what's your default position? Because yet when we're noticing something, we're jumping in, you have a scan through the chat, we're stepping in, we're helping, we're checking in, asking if they've got questions. But picking your timing around doing that is the difference between being a guide, which is what we want you to do, drives up accountability, versus taking the responsibility for solving the problem. Yeah? Is that making sense for everybody? Okay. So let's keep moving. I love a diamond. In fact, I'm an Aries. I'm an April baby, and they tell me that is my birthstone. I feel very lucky that it's my birthstone. I love a diamond. What I do love even more is this little anecdote here, that without pressure, there are no diamonds. And I know now there's lab-grown diamonds. Like, I know it's a thing, right? And don't know what pressure is applied. I don't know the chemical way they make them. Maybe someone can inform me on that. But we know that without pressure, a traditional diamond, there is no diamond, right? And without accountability, there is no high performance. Some of you may like that high performance language. Some of you may go, no, not us, thanks. We don't have high performance as part of our culture. That's fine. Sub it in for whatever high performance is for you. If we are all working in a type of business, whether it's a non-for-profit, whether it's a NGO, whether it's a whatever, ASX listed, we are all here to achieve results, whatever those results mean for us. And without accountability, there is no potential for you to achieve those results, for your team to achieve those results. So I think Jen has us ready with a poll. Jen, can I just cross over to Jen? Jen, are we ready with a poll? Yeah, beautiful. Where do most leaders struggle with accountability? And you've got some options there, I think. Can people see the options? No. Jen, have we got those options in there?
No, there's no options. Check.
So let's do this. There are 4 options, which in fact, I won't type them into the chat now. So where do most leaders struggle with accountability? So is it being too soft? So take note and just write 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat. Being too soft or avoiding the conversation. Being too direct and creating defensiveness. Not setting clear expectations early, or not following up on commitments. So where do you reckon most leaders struggle with accountability? Number 1, are they being too soft, avoiding the conversation? Put this in the chat, please. So if that's the number 1 for you, being too soft. Number 2, being too direct or creating defensiveness. Number 3, not setting clear expectations early. And number 4, not following up on commitments. Ooh, look at that. Not setting clear expectations early. Yeah, and some are saying not following up on commitments. Good. Well, we've got a bit of a spread now, but so far, so for most of you, it's not setting those clear expectations early. That's where we struggle with accountability. So why do you reckon that's happening? And just put it in the chat or unmute. Why do you reckon we're not setting clear expectations early? Someone who's given me a 3. Oh, you want to establish the issue first. Emma. Is Emma there? Is Emma happy to come off? Oh, yeah, Emma, we had a chat with you, didn't we?
Yes. So,
So you want to establish the issue first. Tell us a little bit more.
well, I guess that's if you're not. Sometimes you want to establish what it is that you're discussing, or, like looking at what their struggle is first before you set the expectation of what it is. And I think that's something that I probably struggle with. It's like you get kind of into sort of checking in chat mode and not around leadership and actually saying, like setting it out in a clear, structured way, I suppose.
Yep. So sometimes we want to know a little bit from them, right? Before we're setting expectations. Yeah. And then, Bill, you've said we don't always know our expectations. Bill, are you happy to come off mute and tell us a little bit more? I'm going to assume Bill can't come off mute. We may not know our expectations. And I think here as leaders, we've got to know what those expectations are. So accountability is absolutely, when we're not setting those expectations early, we leave people with ambiguity about what we want from them, right? And that can affect their accountability because they might be left with, well, I've got a vision or a view of what it looks like in my mind based on what you've just told me. That doesn't match yours because you've got a different view. And so the key here is to have that clarity, that conversation, which is, this is how I want it to look. What do you think? You're getting some input from them, which is, I guess, to Emma's point around, getting a little bit more information from them. And then we can share what we know and then come to a clear outcome on what those expectations are. But absolutely right. Most leaders struggle with accountability because we're not taking enough time up front to really set those expectations. If you do not know what that end product needs to look like and you need some of that input from your team, then I would be very clear about that too, because that then is setting the expectation. Then they understand that their accountability as part of this is to give some input. So you're shaping it together. Yeah. When we leave our people in a state of ambiguity, whether we mean to or not, and often for most leaders, we do not mean to, we impact the ability for them to really have that level of accountability that we want. And then we go and complain about them, right? So we go, oh, then they never get what I'm saying, or I'm always disappointed. If that's you sitting there right now thinking and feeling that, I would do a little bit of self-reflection and go, well, what can I do to make sure that I'm being abundantly clear? Even if that is communicating the only information that I have at the time. Right. And that's to Bill's point. Maybe we don't know what the expectations are totally, but have we got at least a frame that we can give people to guide them a little bit? All right. So let's look at the data, right? Why do leaders struggle with accountability? So the data, and this is taken from 2 key references, you've got the references there on the screen. It shows us that about 70% of employees, and this is leaders and employees, everybody, avoid difficult conversations. And people often hesitate to address problems because they fear damaging relationships. Now, particularly that, and people often hesitate to address problems, that matches beautifully with what many of you told me before, which is emotions. We're worried about emotions. We're worried about their emotions, our emotions. We don't want to feel pain. We don't want them to feel pain. So we avoid it. And then in avoiding it, it's also because we don't want to have difficult conversations. Now, my view on this, and I've said this publicly before, the fact that we call them difficult conversations does not help us people. Like, it really does not. When we're setting it up going, oh my gosh, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, it is going to be difficult because you're telling your brain it's going to be difficult. Whereas imagine if we called them, this is really naff, but imagine if we called them like nourishing conversations or even feedback conversations, which is pretty pathetic, but something other than difficult conversations. We are prepared then differently in our brain for that discussion. So number one, let's stop calling them difficult conversations. Are people in agreement with me on that? Just a little one of these or a smiley face or something, or tell me, no, I don't agree. Let's stop calling them difficult. And let's actually be thinking about now, how we increase that accountability. But it looks like you're in good company based on that research. All right. So now let's look at, I want to shift slightly. So still accountability, but this is accountability and psychological safety. Because as leaders, we may want to increase the level of accountability. So that is the level of responsibility, but also what people understand that they need to do as part of a conversation. So if I know what I'm accountable for, I've got clear goals, maybe some KPIs, I've got a pathway forward that I know I need to follow in order for me to do my bit, my component. I'm going to be helped if I've got some clear goals, expectations set up front. So we've already covered that. Psychological safety, when people don't feel that psychological safety, it's very hard for them to be accountable. And a couple of things to share with you on this. So has anyone heard of Project Aristotle? It's a very fancy name. I don't know why they called it Project Aristotle. I love finding out how companies and organizations call projects the way they do, like those code names. I don't know where this one came from. It must have had something to do with from that philosopher's opinion, Aristotle. But they conducted this study. This was now conducted back in 2012. It was written up here in 2015, but the study actually occurred in 2012. And Google at the time went across, it was 1,200 people, so 180 teams, about 1,200 people. And they looked at what are the key things here that make our teams most effective and successful. And what they found as a result of that study is that teams, those more successful teams, combine psychological safety with clear accountability and dependability. So psychological safety, me feeling that I can speak up freely without fear of repercussion or retribution in terms of what I need to say, and where I've got clear accountability and dependability, that made those teams more successful. So dependability here is team members can reliably complete quality work on time and hold themselves accountable to one another. I know that my teammates can depend on me, and vice versa. What this project found is that these high-performing teams combine psychological safety with dependability and accountability. Both, right? Those two statements are it's re-emphasizing the point. So we need both. We need accountability and dependability in order to have psychological safety. So now let's look at the queen of psychological safety. I think she's the queen of psychological safety, Amy Edmondson. If you've never come across Amy's work, I would highly recommend you get across her work. So she's done a bunch of things. I call her the queen of, I don't think she's ever been called that. She has now. She is the leading researcher globally on psychological safety, and she's written some amazing books, literature on it. There's one of them there in terms of what we've sourced. Amy talks about what really sets teams apart, and one of those things that she talks about is accountability. She does a lot of her work in the health sector, actually, where you've got very high pressure environments and in clinical settings, in primary and tertiary healthcare. And she talks extensively about what teams need to do in order to be able to perform in those high stakes environments. One thing that she talks a lot about is this model that you see there on the right-hand side. So what happens when we have either high or low psychological safety, but also what happens when we have low and high accountability. And you can see there that there are 4 different zones that either we might find ourselves in or that our team members might find themselves in. Now, if we have low psychological safety and low accountability, we're probably going to be in what Amy calls this apathy zone. So this is, if I was to replace apathy with an emoji, it would be that meh emoji. You know, that like, I don't care, like whatever. Or whatevs, as my teenagers say. And so those of you with teenagers know what I'm talking about. It's like whatevs, right? They don't care. It's like, I'm checked out. Could not give a rat's, right? That's the apathy zone. For that to occur, we have low accountability. So we're not really clear on what the expectations are of us. And we've got low psychological safety because maybe we've attempted to give some feedback and maybe that's just fallen on deaf ears, or it's been ignored, or it's been criticized. If we have, and we're staying in low accountability at the moment, if we have high psychological safety, so we are part of a team that has difficult conversations. I said that we're not going to call them difficult, but more challenging. Those conversations that are a little bit more prickly, you know, that where we know there's going to be perhaps differences of opinions, but we know that those differences of opinions are going to be met and embraced as opposed to being resisted. So that doesn't mean every idea is a good idea. Ideas can still be critiqued, but we critique the idea, not the person. That's the key difference here, right? That's high psychological safety. But if we have low accountability, if we're like, great team, it feels really fantastic for me to be part of this team, but I don't know what is being asked of me because my accountability is low, I'm going to be cruising in comfort zone. This is freeway cruise control driving. Yeah, my hands are on the steering wheel and I'm paying attention, but I don't recommend this, but you could have your feet cross-legged on your seat. Right. Like you're in cruise. That's comfort zone. It's pretty good to be in comfort zone, but it's not where we want to be. I'm sure you can see where we want to be, right? I'm getting there. Anxiety zone. Anxiety zone, nothing good comes of this. We have high accountability. In very, very clear terms, what's required of us has been made clear. It's been communicated, we know it, but maybe for whatever reason we don't have the capability, maybe we don't have the capacity to achieve whatever it is that we need to achieve. That with low psychological safety, where I might not be able to tell my manager or my leader that I've made a mistake. I may feel ashamed, embarrassed, too vulnerable to tell my leader or my team that I don't have the experience to do this. I don't feel ready to do this. So low psychological safety, that drives someone up into anxiety zone. Not conducive to team performance. You're not going to get anything great out of that. So you can see their accountability is high, but the person's performance is going to be impacted by the fact that they've got little or low psychological safety. Where we want to be, of course, it's in the green zone, it's in learning zone. So where we want to be is where we've got teams where we, as the leaders of these teams, are ensuring we've got high psychological safety in our teams, but also high accountability. You know, our people know what's expected of them. Our people, we're not taking the pressure off, because remember, business, we're here, all of us are operating in businesses, whether it doesn't matter what type of business it is, but we're here to achieve results. So we're not taking the pressure off those results, but we have very, very high psychological safety. We're making it comfortable for people to ask questions, make mistakes, you know, fail fast, all that kind of stuff. But we're also ensuring that there's clarity on what they need to do. Is everyone good with that? Yeah. Okay. So we want to be in this learning zone. So now I have a question for you about this learning zone. What is one thing you could do to move your team closer to the learning zone? And if you don't have a team, think about yourself. And I would love if you pop it in the chat. I know for some of you that might be a bit vulnerable, but surely we're all friends now, hey? Surely we're all friends. So remember, in the learning zone, we're increasing psychological safety. We're increasing accountability. Yeah, Nathan. How are you going to do that? Hello. I hope you're okay for me to ask you a question to come off mute. Oh, I don't think we have audio. We can't hear you. Nah, sorry. But pop it in the chat, because yes, we're going to provide more accountability. You might just need to check the audio settings just to make sure we've got you the right speaker. We're going to provide more accountability, but how? Beverly is helping out, I reckon, there with commitment to feedback. Yes. Beverly, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it starts with feedback, constructive feedback or identifying or addressing issues, but also the positive ones. I mean, that's how we all learn. And in that, they have a clearer understanding and therefore are likely to take on more accountability, sometimes unknowingly, because they feel comfortable, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Good. So in that feedback, it's like maybe you're hearing it too, but there is an opportunity for those exchange of ideas where then that clarity comes so that you achieve a greater clarity from an accountability perspective because you're giving the person feedback. Now, remember, way back when, that 25 minutes ago, and I showed you that diagram where I said pretend it's a flywheel and we had self-awareness and trust running all the way through. Beverly's point is around feedback. If we don't have trust and if we don't have self-awareness, that's going to fall flat. So self-awareness, trust, giving that feedback, that gives us a greater opportunity to be clearer in our expectations. Yeah, beautiful. I'm checking in to see whether we've got any commentary from Nathan. No. But feel free to share it, Nathan, whatever you were going to say. Can we check your audio now? No. Yeah. Just feel free to pop it in the chat. Yeah, beautiful. Kelly, awesome. Modeling, I realized I got this from last week. What I learned is, yeah, beautiful. Where's Kelly? I'm looking for you on my screen, Kelly. Maybe you're on my other screen. Hello.
Hello.
Tell us more. That's awesome.
So I think like just by modeling that accountability when you do something wrong, stepping up and saying, I could have done this differently and next time I'll address it in this way. Or
So on that, I was in a session with a group this morning, and we were looking at psychological safety, but we were looking at it in terms of sharing recent setbacks and wins. Exactly to your point, Kelly. And one thing we talked about, which we all had a good giggle at, is when someone with good intention says, "Oh my gosh, 10 or 15 years ago when I was doing blah blah, I learnt that, and therefore now, I'd like you to learn from that lesson too." The issue with that is the time. So it's contextual. In order for a lesson to resonate with us, it's always more powerful, as Kelly says, I got this wrong last week. Like, this is something that's recently happened to me. And as a leader, you are then seen as fallible. You're a real person. You're not a robot yet. They're coming. That's different. Not talking about AI today. Trying not to, because we're all sick of that. There's plenty of stuff on AI. But we are saying to the person, hey, I got this wrong. Like, this is recent. I am still learning. As a leader, I'm still learning. I'm getting this from you, right? Or I'm sharing this with you because I learned it. I think that's really important. Really nice structure to that too. What I learned is the next time I'll do. Fantastic. So I think you've got some good ideas there around what you can do to move your team into the learning zone. If you don't cheat, look at the chat. There's plenty of things there. Crowdsourcing is one of my clients called it crowdsourcing when we're sharing those ideas. So feel free to crowdsource. Okay, let's keep moving along. Okay. Accountability is really hard without empathy. And this is a little piece from the Potential Project, which really starts to distinguish for us what's the difference with empathy and leadership. And the key difference they talk about in their research is that with empathy, and we really don't want to do pity and sympathy in leadership. Like, it's very ineffectual if you are looking to drive accountability in your teams. But when we're moving into empathy and compassion, we're partnering, and we're really saying, I'm walking alongside you, whether or not I've experienced that thing. But the key thing here that distinguishes normal empathy to empathy in leadership is that you've got to have this willingness to act. You've got to be motivated to actually do something. So setting clearer goals, having the conversation, offering support, whatever it is that you can do in that support, and then fundamentally have an understanding of that person's experience. This does not mean that you need to have had their lived experience. You don't need, that old adage of you need, empathy about walking in someone else's shoes. I actually disagree with that, because their tread, like when you go for a walk along the beach, if any of you have done that recently and you see all the beautiful footprints, I love seeing that. Because of different shoes, because of different shoe sizes, we're all walking along that beach, but they're all different, those imprints that we leave. And that's based on our experience, our context, even the way we place our foot right in the sand. So we're walking alongside. We're not necessarily, we have an understanding of their experience, but we don't need to have lived their experience. But we need to be activated and willing to do something. So how do we develop more empathy? This is a tool called the Empathy Map, which some of you will have done with me before, but I want to introduce it to you if you haven't today. The way they use the Empathy Map, and we use it in design thinking all the time. So if some of you are responsible for product or service design in your business, maybe user experience, that kind of work, you might have come across this. We use it in leadership also as a tool, and it helps us to have more empathy for people. And the way that we use it is you grab yourself literally a blank piece of paper, you separate it into those 4 quadrants that you see with the bottom piece, the influences. And we're just thinking about that issue, the issue that this person may be having that we're supporting them with. Maybe they're underperforming. Maybe they're, something's not working, and we have to help them with that in order to increase their performance. We're looking at the issue through these questions. So the person is at the center about that issue. If we're saying to them, you haven't hit your goals 3 months in a row, What are they saying about it? You know, they're saying to us that they're very apologetic. They won't do it again, but it keeps happening. Maybe they're saying to others they feel that they're being unfairly treated. What are they doing about it? Well, I can see that they're trying, but still not much happening. In fact, I can see that they are trying, but they're also talking to a lot of people about it, and I'm not seeing a lot by way of action. They've got the right intention, but they're not doing enough. What might they be thinking? They might be thinking that their job's on the line. You know, we've not meeting your results. It's a sales environment, by the way. Let's chuck that into the mix in this hypothetical situation. They haven't met their KPIs 3 months in a row. Times are pretty tough for business. They're probably thinking their job might be on the line, and what they might be feeling pretty deflated, lacking confidence, unclear on future, unclear on what they need to do to turn the performance around. So when you're answering these questions on your little piece of paper, this is just you thinking about the issue through the perspective of that person. You don't have that person in the conversation. And then the influencers is not how many TikTok and social media followers they have, right? It's got nothing to do with their TikTok following or their Instagram following. It is about who's influencing them. Is it their teammates? Is it their partner? Is it their, the partner might be saying, we cannot afford for you to lose this job. So they might be feeling the pressure from that. You know, their teammates might be going, well, you're being very unfairly treated. Like, that's just not on, whatever. So these are the people that are getting in. And that influencers piece just helps you to get a sense of, well, who's guiding them? What might they be, what's being shared with them in order to influence how they're feeling. So once we've got the empathy map, this is, again, you've just done this by yourself. You're then going to go in and ask a bunch of questions. Because remember, at this stage with the empathy map, you've only got world according to you about it's your opinion. It is about them, but we don't have their input. So in order to complete the empathy map, and this is where you've done it on one side, and then you would flip over to the other side, and this is where you come up with your questions. These are some questions that we love based on our research. A lot of these are from Australian guy who now lives in Canada, Michael Bungay Stanier. But Michael's work is he's written a great book actually called The Coaching Habit. It's the book I'm most jealous of that I wish I had written. You know, one of those? Yeah, it's one of those. He's awesome. I love him. These are a lot of his questions and his work. We've reframed them slightly. My favorite one here is, how can I best support you? So if we want to drive accountability, so remember where we've gone today, we're looking at how do we drive accountability, what gets in the way. We know that coaching is going to help us in terms of driving that accountability. We know that good questions are going to help us to drive accountability. That's ask in the model. We've already done the connection piece, because the connection piece is that empathy piece that we've just looked at through the empathy map. Then we're going to come up with some really good questions which will give us a bit more understanding of what's going on for this person. And then I'm hoping that, from those questions, you come up with 3 or 4 at least that you would absolutely be willing to go and have a conversation about with that person. Then you start plugging the holes in your empathy map. And I often refer to the empathy map as a piece of Swiss cheese. It looks like Swiss cheese, because what's the defining feature of Swiss cheese? Holes. Exactly. And it's really annoying when you just want a nice bit of cheese on a biscuit. It's nice, yum, but it's not cheddar, right? Now we want to take it from Swiss cheese so it's a nice chunky piece of cheddar. No holes in it, and we've got our answers to our questions. Is that good for people? Okay. This little 2 to 1 is just a little personal challenge which I like to chuck out there. In the next week, if you're a leader, see if you can ask double the questions to those that you answer. Who's prepared to take on that challenge? Show of your thumbs, please, if you are a thumbs up. If you like, no thanks, Rita. Yep. So when you ask more questions, you're operating in that look at all those beautiful thumbs go up. You're operating from a coaching mindset. You are also going to drive accountability, because guess what? You're not answering the questions. You're just asking them. And when people then are required to answer the questions, their accountability goes up. It's on them. It's not on you. What's on you is to ask some really great questions that will unlock their thinking, because you're playing that role of guide. So ask more questions. That's your personal challenge. I'd love to hear how you go on that too. All right. Now, we're almost at the end, but I can't leave you if I don't share with you a little bit about the performance curve. And this is known as the Yerkes-Dodson's performance curve. Do you know that these people came up with this in 1908? I kid you not. The original paper, there have been reviews on this paper. The original paper is 1908, which blows my mind. I was like, oh my gosh. So it's probably ripe for a little bit of addition to the body of knowledge. Yes, there has been an addition to the body of knowledge in this space, but this is still true, as true today as what it is when Yerkes-Dodson wrote it up in 1908 in their paper. What this tells us is that if we want, so with accountability, the whole purpose of this is to drive more performance, right? That's what we're here for, irrespective of what kind of business you are in. So if that language doesn't work for you, take that with a grain of salt. When we are increasing performance, we run a very, very real risk of pushing people over the edge, metaphorically. Over the edge is here. Now, remember when we were talking about psychological safety and accountability, and we looked at that anxiety zone? Do you remember that? And the anxiety zone was in red, and then we want to be in the learning zone, and then we looked at what we can do. When we are not managing performance well in our teams, we can push people over the edge pretty quickly. And so we think, I'm being really clear, I'm asking what's of them. But if the pressure is too intense and they cannot, for whatever reason, perform at the level that we need them, could be a capability issue, or it could be a willingness issue, often called skill and will. Do they have the skill and do they have the will? Then we push them over here. Nothing good's going to come of that. All you will end up with is a burnout claim and a stress claim, which will not help your business results. It certainly impacts them first and foremost, and no one's happy. So there is a sweet spot for performance. And as a leader, you've got to know how to toggle this pressure. So how much pressure to apply, but also what's the limit of their ability from a performance perspective? How much, what's their skill and what's their will, basically? What can you do to be increasing their skill in a way which doesn't crush the diamond? So if we're not applying pressure, then we're in boredom. This is that apathy zone, whatevs, and cruise control. So this is just something to be thinking about as you're, maybe if you're thinking about how do I increase that accountability? So I'm not doing all the heavy lifting. I've actually got my team performing at where I need them to be. Have a think about this. Are you applying too much pressure, too little pressure? And just like Goldilocks' porridge, we want it to be just right for that person. All right. I'm going to skip that little question because we're nearly on time. So the last thing I want to leave you with, skip that poll, Jen. The last thing I want to leave you with is a conversation model for feedback. And this is a growth-oriented model. 3 components to this. I reckon it's pretty easy, and this is what I want to leave you with today. When you are going into a conversation because you want to increase accountability and performance, the first thing you need to do is be really clear on the intention. So what's the intention of your conversation with the person today? Be clear about that. My intention today is to help you lift your performance, because for the last 3 months, we haven't seen what we need to. The observations, what I've noticed, that's where you go second, is that your motivation's dropped. You're not using your team members enough. You're taking things, very personally. I'm interested to know a little bit more about that, right? So with your observations come questions. So you're sharing a little bit with them, what's happening. You're also sharing your observations, but you're also asking them some questions to help them develop a sense of self-awareness. And then finally, you're unlocking through questions. And how many more questions are you going to ask this week than what you're going to answer? How many more? 2. Yeah, beautiful. You're going to double it. So you're going to double the questions that you answer this week. And in doing that, you're going to unlock their thinking. So growth focused conversation, increasing accountability. You're going to look at your intent. What's the purpose of this conversation? What are you observing? And then unlock through questions. That will increase their accountability and also decrease yours, particularly if you are feeling tired and overwhelmed because you feel like you need to be jumping in for your team all the time. All right. With 1 little minute to go, I am interested. What are you going to take away from this masterclass? What's just a quick win that you're like, yeah, I'm going to do that? Very quickly, please, in the chat. What's one thing you're going to take away from this masterclass? We love running these masterclasses and we will, yeah, beautiful, Emma. Thank you. We will continue to run these masterclasses. There's a QR code where you can scan. It'll take you to our website and tell you all the things that are happening, our events, our programs, and our services. So if you want to continue the conversation today, please reach out. We love talking to you and finding out what's happening in your teams and how we can help. I love seeing what you're going to do. Yeah, twice the questions. Everyone's in. And setting clear expectations. Awesome. Thanks very much for joining today, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Have a great week. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.